Welcome to UFO Classified.
So my skeptical mind, and that's just who I am, my skeptical mind goes to, well, yeah, of course, you've got this guy over here that's logical and reasonable, and you got this guy over here that's wearing a tinfoil hat. Of course the tinfoil hat guy's going to see a lot of stuff, right? He's like imagining it, or he's watched one too many sci-fi movies.
But it's used to help us frame hypotheses for UFO propulsion, power, stealth, weaponry.
Everything that we experience is very positive.
Sometimes the field of ufology has a short memory span.
We didn't know anything about the $22 million back then. We just kind of thought, well, this is, and I think that was the reason why they were looking for military-type people, because in the military, you work with whatever you got, no matter what the situation is. You just kind of adapt and overcome.
Well, happy Friday, everybody. I am happy to be here and spend my evening with you. I want to give a big shout out to all my friends who are in chat already. Thanks for following me. Thanks for all of your support and for helping to keep UFO Classified on the air. I could not do this without your contributions, and over the past week I've have had a couple new Patreons, and I want to just thank you for helping. It is wonderful. As you know, I have been busy at work going through the Anne Druffel archives, and I cannot tell you the gems that I am finding every day I go in there, it is like opening a Christmas present. It is absolutely unbelievable. And for for my Patreons, I want to do something special and start sharing files with those of you who make the contributions to the show, because I think it is so important to see some of this, and I really look forward to playing more of the audio cassettes that I have, which I will be doing during the break. I'm going to continue playing the interview from Dick Hall from NICAP, because it just gets better and better with each moment of that interview that Anne Druffel did. So, lots happening in the world, as we know. And I am very grateful to have my guest this evening on the show, Tom Mellett. He is an incredibly brilliant man. I love the way I love his responses on social media. I found him, I started watching some of his responses on social media, and it just was drawn to him because he had some really interesting things to say that were witty and were calling people out, and it was very, very interesting. So, Tom, you have an interesting life. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about it, but you went to the University of Texas at Austin, and you have a BA in classics and then a BS in physics, and you were in, there was the Paracast. There is, I want to just read this because this makes me laugh. You sent this to me in the Paracast. Thomas Morrison, that he's talking about you, and he says, it makes no difference whether you're a paid disinformation agent or not, because your mind is a dumpster fire of irrationality and blithering nonsense, so nothing that you have to say holds any value regardless of your motives, and in fact your presence here represents nothing more than a regrettable contamination of the information field. Wow.
I love Thomas Morrison so much. He's a sculptor in New Orleans, besides studying modern physics. But after he wrote that, I said, "Oh my God, I want that for my epitaph."
That's one of the better things I've heard.
Yeah, right. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I went to UT and got 2 degrees there, and but I started out in New York City. I was raised Irish Catholic, and went to Catholic schools, and actually, though I first went to RPI to study physics, but then left there in the late 60s or early 70s, and I ended up going in the Army, where I was. They did put me in military intelligence, but then I was good at languages, so they sent me to the language school, and that's where I learned German. And then I was sent to Fort Huachuca for interrogation school. So during the Vietnam War time, I was essentially trained in interrogating German prisoners of war.
Wow.
You know, but as I like to say, the Army, they prepare you well to fight the previous war. After 30, they figured out how to fight World War II correctly, and then. But anyway, it was a great experience. And then finally, I ended up going to Texas in 1976 in Austin, and actually lived there for a total of 17 years in two separate sections of time. But but my interest was interesting. I was never that interested in ufology itself, but my interest has always been more in philosophy and theology of ufology.
Right.
And actually, I should say, let me burnish a ufology credential here. In 1994, Hal Puthoff graciously sponsored a paper that I gave at the Society for Scientific Exploration, their annual get-together in Austin. It was that year, 1994, and it was a paper on what was it? What was it about? Narcissism and the anthropic principle, or something. But just to show that my interest is more in the philosophy of this.
Wow.
So,
I'd love to read that sometime.
Yeah, I don't have the paper, but I have the abstract is still online. But I suppose I could reconstruct it.
That is fascinating.
But anyway, if you I don't know if you want to know more about sort of my connection with ufology, because it's so peripheral, but it's a lot. It's through mainly Hal Puthoff, who I got to know because I first made friends with Arthur M. Young, the guy who invented the Bell helicopter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But whose books I read in '76 called the Geometry of Meaning and the Reflexive Universe, and he founded the Institute for the Study of Consciousness in Berkeley in the early '70s, and he was like call him like the Gertrude Stein of the hippies who saved physics. You know that book, Jack Sarfati?
Yes.
As the and his group. Well, they essentially first got together at their place, Gertrude Stein's salon. So that's a connection. And then at the time, Arthur sent me, or he told me about Hal Puthoff, who was on the board of our institute. So that's I first heard of Hal in the early '80s. But interestingly enough, I meet Hal Puthoff in person for the first time in 1984 at, of all places, Rudolph Steiner College in Sacramento, California.
Oh, that's fascinating.
I was studying to become a Waldorf teacher, and that's why I came to LA 50 years ago, was to teach math and physics in a Waldorf high school in Northridge. That's a whole other story. But here I meet Hal Puthoff there. He's giving a lecture on his ESP research, and the reason he was there is because his wife, Adrienne Kennedy, and he were the founders of the Palo Alto Waldorf School. And in fact, Hal trained, the school needed $25,000 to open, and they didn't have it. What Hal did was to train the board of the school. He trained them in associative remote viewing. And what they did is play the silver futures market with remote viewing, and they ended up making $26,000. So remote viewing helped the Palo Alto Waldorf School open. you know.
That is a good story.
Yeah. So, and then in '86, I moved back to my wife and daughter, and I told Arthur Young and he said, "Oh, Hal Puthoff moved there." Oh, so both moved on in '86, and then in the late '80s, with Hal and I were parents at the Austin Waldorf School, and we were like the daddy designated drivers, you know, driving our kids to school, my daughter and his kids to the Waldorf School there. So I'd see him, you know, in that context. Yeah, then there was that 1994 SSE convention, and that has I don't know what you call it, a footnote in ufology, because that was where Hal's chief engineer at that time, and I think a MUFON official in Texas, Ron Johnston, at the age of 40, he just during a lecture, he was like 3 seats down from me. He suddenly keels over and dies.
Oh, okay. That was oh my goodness.
Yeah, that was Ron Gerald Johnston. And, you know, you can look on the internet about, you know, him. It's still like, I don't know, they didn't find the cause of death. So, of course, there's conspiracy theories about, well, it was a CIA hit of some kind, but I don't know. You know, it just, but that happened at the conference in '94. So anyway.
And what was Ron's background?
Ron, I'm not sure, but he was, you know, technical, because he was, you know, Hal had his Institute for Advanced Studies in Austin, which he still has today. I mean, it's called Earth Tech, I guess now, but yeah, I just knew he was Hal's chief engineer. So he was like, you know, Hal's technical wizard.
That's interesting. Wow, I'll have to look into that. That's fast. That's sad. That's very sad, but interesting.
Links on that, because that happened during the conference. So, and anyway, well, I don't know. I never really got into ufology, even though Arthur Young in the late '80s, he got very much into the Billy Meyer stuff, not so much, but interested in the teachings themselves. He didn't care about the fact, you know, the craft or where they came from. He was more interested in the philosophy of it, and so that was like kind of like my introduction to ufology. But it didn't really register, and it wasn't really until you know, I didn't get on the UFO social media until about really 4 years ago, and that was because of Peter Levenda. Because we had Peter, I had known at least on the internet, because he was interested in Arthur Young, because Arthur Young's well, Peter wrote the trilogy Sinister Forces,
mm-hmm.
and book 1 is called The Nine, and The Nine refers to the 9 entities channeled by this Hindu Dr. Vinod in 1952 in Maine. By Andrei Puharich organized this, and so this is in the mythology of modern ufology, right? The 9, this plays a great part. Well, Arthur and his wife Ruth Forbes Young were present, and you know, so Peter wrote up, and other authors have written up, because Arthur's wife, her first husband was Lyman Payne, and they had a son named Michael Payne, who married a woman named Ruth Hyde Payne, who befriended Mina Oswald in Dallas, and you know, and so they are like the if you talk any JFK assassination researcher, Michael Payne and his wife Ruth are the sort of like they're at the top of the list of the you know, the witnesses who were part of the conspiracy. You know. So, but they just happened to be Arthur's. Well, Michael happened to be his stepson, you know. So, and I've talked with Ruth Hyde Payne, and my sense is, she did get Lee Harvey Oswald his job at the Texas School Book Depository, but I think she did it more out of the goodness of her Quaker heart than belonging to a conspiracy. Because after talking to her, I thought, she could be no more involved in a plot to kill Kennedy than my mother.
Right.
So
Well,
anyway.
and that's a really interesting connection there. It's just amazing how these things take place. And I want to, going back to the 9 and Peter Levinda, because, Peter Levinda is a very interesting character. He also has delved into the Mormon religion and different things. And we can talk, I would love to talk to you about that a little bit later because there are lots of connections. But tell us more about the 9. I know that new people that are getting into the subject probably don't understand the kind of the gravity of that whole thing.
Well, you want more about the 9?
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, well, they supposedly were these extra terrestrial entities, like a supercomputer or something, and they were 9 entities that ruled the universe. That this was coming through this Hindu doctor Vinod. I think he was a medical doctor who was channeling this at the Round Table Foundation in 1952 in Maine, that organized by Andrei Puharich. And the 9 was just the group that they just called themselves the 9. Now later on, 20 years later at Eslen, this woman named Phyllis Schlemmer supposedly channeled them again, and she has a whole list of their statements, and they called the guy Tom as the leader of the 9. But curiously enough, now this is another interesting. I'll circle back to Jack Sarfati, because Jack Sarfati at the same time in Brooklyn as a 13-year-old supposedly had these weird telephone calls from a metallic voiced entity that seemed very much like the 9. But he didn't awaken to it until 1973, until he was with Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, and when they introduced who's the spoonbender? The Israel. No, the Israel. No. Ingo Swann is the Israeli. Yeah, who is it? Yeah, I'm having a senior moment at 72. Yeah, Uri Geller. Yes, that's right. Yeah. 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 Right. Yeah, Uri Geller. So, and that his meeting Uri, and then suddenly, I guess they were talking about the 9, and that's when Jack got the realization that 20 years before, as a teenager, he got this message from who he thought was the 9. So anyway, I don't know. This is just what they say. I have no idea how to verify that or anything, but it's fascinating, and because what it leads to these interconnections, that we're all we're all a part of. It's like, I don't know if it's the hive mind or what, or the wisdom of the crowd or whatever it is, but but see, Peter got interested in the 9 because, well, that was his book, but he got interested in Arthur Young specifically because Arthur and his wife Ruth were present there, and then they had their connection with the JFK assassination through it was Ruth Forbes' son Michael, Arthur's stepson, and so I got to know Peter on the internet, because in 2006 he signed on to the Arthur Young Yahoo group that I was moderator of, and so I got and then we hit it off well because he's from the Bronx, and I'm from Upper Manhattan, which is like spiritually the Bronx, and so we had a lot of good stuff in common. And then we sort of, parted. Our Yahoo groups, they all kind of disintegrated, and then, but then it was at 2016, and then I was interested connecting with the work of Jason Horsley. Of
yes, you sent me an article. Thank you so much.
Jason Horsley, and somehow this convergence of. So for me, my interest in ufology today goes back to the what was that? The October surprise of 2016, which is the WikiLeaks dump.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we have. Right about that time, right, when the Podesta emails came out, and of course everybody was focusing on, in the conspiracy, they were focusing on Pizzagate, but then there were these emails with Tom DeLonge, right, between Tom DeLonge and John Podesta, which is kind of it was overshadowed by the, the spirit cooking and all this other stuff. And at the same time, then Peter came on. We'd been in email contact, with me and a friend named Bob in Florida, three of us. And then Peter suddenly said, "Well, I'm writing a book for them. I'm writing 3 books for Tom DeLonge, And then after that, I find out Hal Puthoff is involved.
Of course.
And so I hadn't really connected with Hal. I left Austin in 1998. Was at Vanderbilt for like 5 years, and then came to LA in 2003. But I've been out of touch with Hal Puthoff. So anyway, so all this got me interested. What's all this stuff about Tom DeLonge and TTSA? And then it all started to build, and I guess that was 2016, right? And that was like it was the premature revelation of TTSA, right? They were supposed to come out more in 2017.
Right.
This revelation of the Podesta emails, et cetera, I think that forced Tom DeLonge's hand in some way, I guess, I'm not sure about what the effect was, but it seemed that, they were wanting to,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And it is interesting. And, again, like you say, the connections between these different people are amazing.
I have to
Absolutely.
interrupt you here.
Absolutely. Yep. And so I just want to say, that if you don't know much about Peter Levenda, I would definitely follow up on his work. He has very interesting work that he's done over the years on the occult. And I'm going to talk with Tom a little bit more about the occult connections, about Jack Parsons, about Aleister Crowley, and some of these influences that we see that kind of weave their way into the UFO narrative and things. And I find that just very fascinating. The occult has always been something that I have been fascinated with, I've been drawn to, and I started looking and reading about when I was a little bit younger, actually in high school, and things. I read Necronomicon and different things like that, which in hindsight maybe wasn't the best idea, but lots of interesting things there with that. And we just have to excuse Tom. He's talking with his wife briefly, so we will let him do that. And I want to just give a shout out to Sue Gerberdine, who was in the chat room. If you didn't listen to my show last week with Sue, then you definitely need to replay it. Between her and Phil Leach, I think they have done an excellent job in really talking about some of the issues that the Mutual UFO Network has and is grappling with, some of the controversies at the moment. And so thank you, Sue, and you're back. And so talking about, because the occult and Levenda and all of these things that interweave into ufology, I find absolutely fascinating. And then, you've got the Eslen Institute, which is, by some reports, it's a great place for some spy games to take place. And we'll talk about that too, because that is very, very curious. But look, with regard to, Levenda and his earlier work, what did he do with Necronomicon?
Okay, well, that's where the controversy is, in the sense that the Simon Necronomicon was published in 1977, and it supposedly is this grimoire of spells and incantations that you can do, and supposedly it was written by an author who is not Levenda, who is by the name of Simon Cabana. Now, we jump ahead 29 years, which is a Saturn return, where karma and destiny become fulfilled. In 2006, on Coast to Coast, Ian Punnett interviews not just Peter Levenda, but this mysterious Simon Cabana. And I have the audio, and I gave it to, actually, Jason Horsley has it on his site. Now, the Simon Cabana figure, the book came out then called Dead Names, which is actually a translation of Necronomicon, and sort of an explanation of what went on. But it was challenged, and someone found out that the copyright of the Necronomicon was issued to Peter Levenda. And then, of course, he says, though, it was, well, he does that as a favor for Simon, Anyway, but listen to these. This is August of 2006. Ian Punnett interviewing first Peter Levenda, and then mysterious Simon comes on in a disguised voice, with the voice, slowed down.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, but someone recorded it. But if you speed up the disguised voice to regular speed, it's obviously Peter Levenda.
Well, that's a little awkward.
Yes, and so and so anyway, and I think it's kind of a goof, that. I don't know. I'm sure Ian Punnett was in on it too, but yeah, I mean, he has that. And he has to. It's like his alter ego, and but yet he insists it's a separate person, a different person. Anyway, so that was. Now consider that Peter. You can see him in a Discovery Channel video taking part in an OTO ritual.
Well, that's always interesting.
Yeah, you see, and I can send you that video. So you have the OTO and the the whole Kenneth Grant with Aleister Crowley connection, etc. But the kind of the OTO and that whole occult background. Well, now consider, I mentioned the 29-year Saturn return from 1977 to 2006. Well, in occultism, there's something about a 40-year cycle, or 40 years have to go by before something that is put out into the world before it has a certain effect. And this is known in occultism. Well, 1977 plus 40 is 2017, the year, the New York Times article comes out, and Peter is writing the first, the trilogy of Secret Machines. So, so from the occult point of view, to me, he's very naturally involved with TTSA. So, which to me has this occult dimension is missing from the push for the ET hypothesis, because it does not reckon with the inherent deception and irrationality of the UFO phenomena, which is its essence.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to sort of my one, two heroes I picked up in ufology. One is Jim Moseley, and the other is George P. Hansen.
I like George a lot. I like his work.
Or now, aside from the trickster hypothesis, I don't even have to argue the trickster. I can argue it on more philosophical grounds. But the whole idea that, here is a phenomena that will not allow itself to be understood or captured by modern science, or let's say rationality. And I'm thinking, well, here it is. Look at, like, George has this whole book. He says, okay, he lays it at the feet of the trickster. But if you look at, George spoke of the importance, the value of hoaxing and debunking in ufology. And that got me thinking, wow, yeah, why is it that hoaxers and debunkers get the true believers and the, and even the scientists, if you even talk Puthoff and Eric Davis and all the scientists in it, why does it upset them so much? And I'm thinking, well, a hoaxer calls attention to the UFO phenomena as being deceptive. He said, because whoever's doing the hoaxing, he said, I am deceiving you with this hoax. I mean, this would be the subconscious message. Maybe he believes he's a true believer. But you look at the situation, well, what is a hoax? It's a deception about UFOs. Well, that tells me, well, maybe if you accept the hoax or look at it, he said, hey, what is it telling me about the deceptive nature of the UFO phenomenon? Instead, the true believers, instead of railing against it or demonizing the hoaxer or scapegoating them and telling them how bad they are, that's one side. And this is kind of like a Heisenberg uncertainty principle, I think, in a way. But the other side is irrationality. The George, and there we bring in, look at all the debunkers or the naysayers, or
right. I'm actually probably on that list these days.
But a debunker calls attention to the irrationality of the phenomena. Look at how irrational it is. And a true believer really is upset by the debunker, but the debunker is really saying, hey, what if I were to allow that? Maybe what is the debunker is telling me that the phenomenon is irrational. I should be looking at how and why it's irrational instead of demonizing the debunker. To me, it goes back to that idea of it's like everybody has to be right. Everybody has to be right, and I am right at the expense of the other guy being wrong. The other guy has to be wrong. But suppose we were to admit that, maybe a true believer was to admit, hey, maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe the debunker has a point, or maybe the hoaxer has a point, is telling me something. But and that's why I before I sent you that little book by Catherine Schultz about On Being Wrong. Because she wrote a whole book about this 10 years ago on being wrong, and what if we, and on the emotional price that we feel we'd have to pay to admit being wrong, and especially admitting the other guy is right or might be right, or so anyway, that to me is what I see as the essence of the UFO phenomenon. It's deception and irrationality, but we try to deny that by making it rational, obsessively making it rational, which is, to me, the whole push of TTSA and that whole scientific aspect.
See, and do you even think and for me, TTSA is just a smokescreen. It's just a cover for something. So I really feel, and we've seen this decade after decade with different groups that come up with people in the intelligence community and things. I mean, nothing ever comes of it. And it's just a way to
Yeah, I mean,
dangle a carrot around in front of a few people that are don't have, you know what I mean?
yeah, it's just the latest version, because I think Tom DeLonge is a creature of the social media, whereas say his predecessor, let's say Stephen Greer, was in the early '90s, right, just before the internet. So it's a whole different, it's a generational thing, and you think of the difference the internet made.
Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, I think the internet has done a lot of damage in some regard, and especially when it comes to trying to get to the bottom of a subject of UFOs. But I want to go back, because I think you've mentioned earlier that you spoke at the SSE conference in 1994, and I was wondering if you could tell me who were the other people that were present at the conference. Did you see the typical, like, John Alexander, Victoria Alexander?
Let's see. I was at lunch table. I would eat at the same table with, it was Hal Puthoff and Jacques Vallée were there, because they were BFF, and then of course the guy who stayed at my place was Christopher Bird, who wrote The Secret Life of Plants.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the CIA and Russian and stuff. Anyway, and the doctor in the house. There was one doctor in the house, because when Ron Johnson keeled over, they yelled, and that was Larry Dawsey came running up to try to do CPR, to no avail. But at that time it was I can't, because at the time it was more I wasn't tuned into the UFO people. But I just Hal, Jacques, and Christopher Bird.
Interesting, because I would wonder if the usual suspects, like Dr. Kit Green, Bob Bigelow, if some of those people were there. I would imagine.
No, I don't think they were there, because I was. I could give you the list. They actually remember mailing lists.
Oh yes, those come in handy.
A mailing, they still have a mailing list up there of that would show everyone who was at that conference, and because that's where I found the only residue of my paper is the abstract that I wrote up.
Oh, interesting. I would love to see that list. I think that it's very interesting to see, groups like that. And I mean, you mentioned Puthoff and Vallée and how they've been associates, friends for a long, long time. And, you also mentioned that Lavinda, is that he was seen in a movie clip of at the doing a ritual, I guess, for the OTO. And I was watching a show on Scientology, and I cannot remember the name of it. And it was very interesting, because there was like maybe a 10-second clip, and people were in this room, and they were sitting across from each other. They were auditing each other, which is a practice in Scientology. And lo and behold, there's Jacques Vallée. So it's just very interesting to see how you've got these very tight connections over the decades, and they're kind of moving along in the occult world, in the Scientology world. And what do you make of that and the Scientology, that connection with these people?
All right. Well, that goes back. I mean, Hal Puthoff, as well as Ingo Swann, were OT7s, and Pat Price, the great remote viewer. But the important thing to me is that if you study, Hal and his wife, they married in the Church of Scientology, and he was in that. And then in '74 he wrote up. There was an article about him, and he wrote about how Scientology gave him the courage to play and execute life games. And I thought, wow, that's life games. I mean, LARP, ARG, right? And so the remote viewing was known. I mean, Hubbard talked about exteriorization of perception, and they even, he even used the term viewing remotely in some of the Scientology protocols. So I think remote viewing itself came out of Hal's experience, and Ingo Swann, who in New York was into Scientology. They were both the top level Scientologists. And then they come SRI, and in 1972, SRI hires Jacques Vallée for computer science, and he has an office upstairs, and he comes downstairs to the cafeteria, and that's where he meets Hal Puthoff, and that's how they got acquainted, 1972 at SRI.
And it is so fascinating to me. All the connections, and I was reading about, the inception of the internet, which took place back in like 69, and one of the nodes, ARPA.
ARPA, yeah.
And one of the nodes, interestingly enough, where they were setting it up, one of the test sites was here at the University of Utah. And I found that really interesting, and especially as I put more of the pieces of the puzzle together, and then you look at somebody like Vallée, who is has his specialty, and so it is curious. And then you look at some of the aspects of Scientology, and then you look at the intelligence community that it's embedded in some of these cults, and it's very interesting. Do you think that does MK Ultra have anything to do with this, or studying some sort of mind control, or using a population to try to seed ideas? I mean, were there any undercurrents?
Historical thing, because I think that's where Andrei Puharich, way back when, was involved with the MK Ultra, and and it's very interesting because I was just thinking about that the other day. What is this? What is the connection with QAnon coming up suddenly? Really exploding in popularity after the COVID lockdown, and what makes me wonder about what is. They're peripherally kind of connected with ufology, and I'm wondering if they might be connected with the what is that, the Collins elite, or the fundamentalist Christians in the Pentagon that are the scapegoats that Louis Elizondo and Tom say, these Christian, but
right, which is probably in all likelihood they're creating a cover story to deflect from them, because I believe that they really, people like Bigelow and his comrades are probably the Collins elite. But that's a whole nother show. I've been doing some digging on that one. But I mean, with regard to MK Ultra, I think it's really interesting, and I want to bring this up because it's very important for people to understand that the UFO community is absolutely one of the best places to hide when you're doing this, because you're already in a community where nobody believes you, where you're coming up with these outlandish claims. And there is a book, and I want to just read a little bit out of this because you're going to really, really like this. This is my new recommended read. It's called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, The Fight for a Human Future at the New Frontier of Power by Shoshana Zuboff, and she's a professor at Harvard. And this is amazing, but she was talking a little bit about the Korean War was publicized communist brainwashing techniques that, according to the newly appointed CIA director Alan Dulles, whose name comes up quite a bit in ufology, had reduced U.S. prisoners of war to a state of robotic passivity in which the victims' brains become a phonograph playing a disc put on its spindle by an outside genius which it has no control. American enemies appeared to be on the verge of mastering art and science of mind control with psychological and pharmacological methods unknown to the U.S. military. There were reports of the Chinese and Soviet achievements in remote alteration of a subject's mental capabilities and the elimination of free will. Dulles committed the agency to rapid research and development of mind control capabilities, from de-patterning and rewiring an individual to shaping an entire country's attitudes and actions. I'm just going to read a little bit more more because this is fascinating. Thus began a morbidly fascinating and often bizarre chapter in the history of American spycraft. Much of the new work was conducted in the context of the CIA's highly classified MKUltra project, which was tasked with research and development of chemical, biological, radiological materials capable for employment in clandestine operations to control human behavior. According to testimony in 1975, the Senate investigation of a covert CIA foreign and military intelligence operations, a 1963 Inspector General's report on MKUltra noted several reasons for the program's secrecy, but chief among them was the fact that behavior modification was seen as illegitimate. Research in the manipulation of human behavior is considered by many authorities in medicine and related fields to be professionally unethical. Therefore, the reputation of professional participants in MKUltra were in jeopardy. And so it also goes on to talk about how people in the scientists in the fields of medicine, psychology, wanted to demystify this, and then also use that to their advantage. And we look at some of the players like Hal Puthoff, who allegedly first received some of his funding from Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, Mr. MKUltra himself. And then you look at, Puharich, and you look at some of these people that were involved in some of these, in this area of study as well. And you wonder, what are the true intentions of some of these people? Is it really to study the UFO phenomenon, or is there something more sinister going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, right. That's right. Yeah, I was going to say Sidney Gottlieb. Yes, and the whole idea of mind control, and of course what better way than to take advantage of the religion that's not a religion, right? Like the UFO religion,
right?
Where people would deny that, and just think of Diana Pasulka's book. I mean, it's just it is a new religion, but people deny that. And yes, and then they can be very much manipulated by manipulating religious iconography or religion, with the, and now with the new media, the new electronic media, you can hide. I mean, I wonder about that too. Is this all a giant mind control experiment? But there are so many players, and there are so many interconnections. I'm also wondering if in this chaos, is anybody in control?
You would wonder, but it is interesting to note, and I really recommend for multiple reasons this book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, because, you talk about QAnon, and you talk about some of these mysterious groups or people that are appearing in social media and really pushing a narrative and creating this cult-like following, very dangerous, and promoting ideas and then playing with these really fringe topics. And I'm kind of amazed and a little bit disgusted that there are so many people in ufology that are, they're hook, line, and sinker believing some of these conspiracy theories that are very dangerous to to public health. But that is my own thought. But I think we have to really look at this and look at the fact that, now all of our data is going to Facebook and going to Twitter and all of these places, and they know, exactly what we're thinking. They're in our living rooms. They're, you've got the Nest with the security cameras, your computers, and every microphone is on your phone apps and different things. And so it's very, very interesting, and people need to pay more attention to that because it's pretty serious. And then, like I said, I go back to the fact that you look back at, Vallée and his role with the internet and data mining, and then you look at, you look at Puthoff, and then also Dr. Eric Davis, whose background, and who he's involved in non-lethal weapons and things like that, and you just wonder. And then you've got John Alexander again, the founding father of non-lethal weapons technology, with Janet Morris and things, and you have to wonder where is this playing into all of this, and how can we be better equipped with knowledge to make sure that we're not falling into any of this.
Yeah, because as far as you mentioned, I mean, John Alexander, and I mean, to me, if you look at what is the provenance of TTSA, you know, like you were doing the provenance of a medieval painting or somebody, the artist, and every step of the way, there's Hal Puthoff is involved. If you go back, you know, through Bigelow, but then Bigelow came on the scene, but in the late 80s, I think it was in the late 70s when Hal, when the shift from remote viewing of, even planets and other things shifted into UFOs. And then there became the UFO working group, which got to be headed up by John Alexander in the mid 80s. So, yeah. And so, to me, the whole provenance of TTSA goes, you know, back through Bigelow, through John Alexander, all the way back to, Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, and the whole crew at SRI, including Jacques Vallée, because that's where Jacques Vallée came on the scene in 1972.
And that's fascinating. And, you know, the University of Utah was one of the places, as I was mentioning, for the start of the internet, and Stanford Research Institute was as well, which I did all these connections. I'm like, really? You're kidding me? This is a trip.
And we haven't even talked about the Mormon Mafia, right?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Well, and we've got to get into that, because you've said some things on social media specifically about some people involved in that, and that is, boy, this is going to be a fun second hour. Let me just put it that way. A lot of people are going to be listening to this show, I think, because these are important connections. And again, I always, I think both of us understand that there is a very genuine and real phenomenon, and it is worthy of study and research, and it is also important to make sure that you understand the dynamics that are tainting the field and obscuring the real nature of things.
Yeah. All right. So you want me on for another hour?
Is that okay?
Yeah, I guess it could be. Yeah.
You know, we're going to take a break. Yeah. We're going to take a break because I want to play. I was mentioning that I have some great interviews with Ann Druffel, who is an amazing researcher for 60 years, and she's going to play over the break, and so you can run and do your thing on the break. But this is about 5 minutes, and this is the continuation of an interview I played last week with her and Dick Hall from NICAP, and this talks a little bit more about the intelligence community and things, and so I'm going to play that now. We'll take a break and we will reconvene. Yeah, so go.
Should I hang on for 5 minutes?
Yep, hang on for 5 minutes and go get a glass of water, and we'll play this, and then we will be back, and I appreciate you being here.
Good.
Awesome.
Okay, good. All right.
Thank you.
Great.
Do you suspect that the CIA caused the NICAP breakup?
I addressed the CIA issue head on in my article. I'll send you a copy of it. That'll save time.
Oh, fine.
My paper for the MUFON conference, and I'll go through it. There were various CIA people at various stages of NICAP that did various things, and there's only about one of them that can be interpreted as maybe a negative influence, and that turned out to be Colonel Bryan, who in fact, it turns out, was not an Air Force colonel. He was a naval officer, and the Air Force Reserve colonelcy was we learned belatedly, was a cover story for the CIA. And that Bryan was involved in even establishing, as I understand it, the Air Force counterintelligence. What am I trying to think of? Air Force. I can't think of the right word. It has to do with disinformation. Anyway, he was involved in some spook-type things that we found out after the fact. So he's the one guy but he was not closely involved in the day-to-day operations of NICAP and had little influence on it. So again, I say, so what?
Was he not
obviously
chairman?
There were CIA people sniffing around the edges constantly from the beginning till the end. Now, directly to your question, did they have anything to do with the demise of it? I suspect they might have, because there were various people showing up, and NICAP did go to the guy named Alan Hall, who was a CIA operative, no relation, never heard of him until this time.
Okay.
Even that's interesting that they come up with somebody with my same last name. But,
Well, yeah.
But, yeah, I suspect they may have very well have had something to do with it, but I think the best way to treat that is to go ahead and send you a copy of my paper. It gives you some good background reference material.
Okay. Thank you. Now, about, so that takes care of that. About the Condon Committee, how did Kehoe first get the trick memo? Do you know?
I think he got it from Jim McDonald.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure he got it from Jim McDonald. Or maybe, well, I don't think Dave Saunders would have given it to him. It was either McDonald or maybe Fuller, I don't know, when they were all jointly working on that Look article. But I'm pretty sure it was McDonald.
The way
I learned about it before Kehoe did.
You got to look at it before Kehoe did.
I knew. I was shown it when I first went out to Colorado Project. The second time I went in January of '67. I was shown it by Jim Wadsworth, one of the junior members. Pulled me aside and showed it to me, and I looked at it and read it in the context of everybody happy, talking and drinking in a motel room. And I read it through, and I said, well, he sounds pretty skeptical. We'll have to change his mind, or something like that, and brushing it off, because
Oh, you brushed it off.
I brushed it off because I said, well, he sounds like a skeptic, but, we'll bring him around, kind of thing. I underestimated it, obviously, but that was my initial reaction to it, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
Yeah, so Kehoe didn't learn about it until later, because I don't think I even mentioned it. I didn't think it was anything that important at the time, because we were ebullient anyway. We were Major Kehoe and I drank a toast to the Air Force while we're flying out to Colorado. Here's a toast to the enemy, we said, and we drank a toast.
Oh, did Kehoe go out with you on that trip?
Sure. In November '66, we went out together and addressed them.
Oh, that was the first one.
That was the first one.
Yes, but you didn't see the trick memo till January '67.
Right.
And
at that time, as I say, I sort of brushed it off, as I didn't understand its significance.
Okay, well, the hits keep on coming, and let me tell you, I have got a huge archive thanks to the Druffel children, and I have got so many videos that I am getting ready, digitized, so I can share them with you, and that was a little portion of Anne Druffel's interview with Dick Hall. She was in the middle of writing a book called Firestorm about James E. McDonald, and that was part of the interview process for her book. Her book took her 10 years. It's an incredible book if you want to pick it up. And I also was mentioning and reading from a book that I'm recommending for all of you. And this goes well beyond ufology, but this is, I believe, very important for all of us. The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, the fight for a human future at the new frontier of power, from Shoshone Zuboff. It is really, really a groundbreaking book. So definitely get that. I'm here with Tom Mellett, who has been gracious enough to join me this evening. And Tom, like I was saying in the first part of the show, I love reading your posts, because you say things sometimes and it just drops me to my knees. They're very, very good posts. Well, you know you're living when you're getting blocked on Twitter. Well, but you got to keep people on their toes, and that's the thing. It's like I see, so many people that just want to go along with the narrative, and they're not asking questions. When that's why the field is whatever it is, the field. I hate to even use that terminology, but I mean, that's why it is like it is. And so I think, it's very important, for me to, I don't know. I just think it's just an important thing to talk about.
Well, yeah. What's interesting is that it's like a willingness. Are we willing to admit being wrong and about things, and that the other guy who is like our arch enemy could be right, and I'm looking, from modern physics point of view. Just today, I was, going over this article about the dilemma in quantum physics today is whether or not objectivity it's going by the wayside, and we salvage. And that means, is there people like to argue, well, opinions versus facts, but it may turn out that one conjecture I have is that the dilemma in quantum physics, which is expressed by this John Bell's theorem or Bell's inequality. Well, without going into the physics of it, it may turn out that no human being can be more than 75% right about anything, which means we are at least 25% wrong about everything. And realizing that would go a long way to, I think, reconciling the kind of the tribal nature of whether it's the political system or or which is right there in ufology as well, where where we worship at the altar of absolute objectivity, but that's broken down in modern physics. You can't, if you look at modern physics, trying to reconcile quantum and general relativity, you can't do it, and it may be inherently impossible to do it, so that there will be no solution, and we're kind of like drifting. But one of the intriguing consequences may be that, I have my theory about, let's say, or my interpretation of quantum physics or the world, and this other guy has a different one, and I don't like his, but his could be just as valid as mine. And so it's that I don't know what to call it. You can the word is it modesty, humility, or something like that, to come to admit not only that I might be wrong, but that the other guy might be right. I think it's much easier to admit, I made a mistake, but no, he's absolutely wrong. I think we're at a point that may be why we feel this kind of chaos, because the old order is breaking down, and objective science itself is breaking down. The idea that there's an absolute reality independent of my observation. Said, well, that's not quite. It's mostly there. It's maybe 80% there, but it's not 100%. I mean, so anyway, that's I don't want to get off into the weeds of quantum physics and stuff, but but it's just that we really don't know. And one of the I like to update the Gautama Buddha said nothing lasts, and I think in our day I like to say, well, everything lasts, but nothing matters. And then I add all is vanity. Mm-hmm. So like and vanity doesn't really mean, when we think of being vain or being overtly narcissistic. It's vain in the sense of ephemeral, or just, dust that just sort of drifts away. That's more the Hebrew word that's used in Ecclesiastes, from where that comes. So, so it's like, I think we're really, each one of us is forced to look at our ego involvement with everything, with all aspects of our lives. What if we were to let up on that? Or it doesn't say I'm not saying destroy the ego or kill the ego like the Eastern way, but to value. There's a philosopher, theologian that I liked, I knew on the internet. He died a few years ago, named Dave Leahy, who spoke about this phrase, infinite inclusive difference, that we are infinitely inclusive as individuals. And can we begin to realize that? And that's sort of the, I don't know, that's when I start thinking of myself as like a theologian or even a priest, say, wow, I really, this is what I'm trying to push here, and it's through the aspects of science, and somehow I find myself caught up in ufology because it's playing out, I think, in the ufology community, I think more than any other right now, because it is, there's what's that word, intersectionality. There's the ufology seems to be like a nodal point of many streams intersecting in ufology, like all the ones you mentioned about the mind control, and, all that, and all the cast of characters we go through, right? Are all somehow they cross this node of ufology.
And it's interesting to me because I wonder, when you've got, very clear evidence that all of these, the same people have been involved in activities that have absolutely nothing to do with UFOs, but they could, use the UFO narrative as a cover. It's like I wonder why people are so willing to look past that and not understand that there might be some spy games afoot, or there might be something else going on with some of these people and groups.
Yeah, I guess I've thought that, and then, but how much does it affect people in their day-to-day lives? Or is it again like a very what is it? As Hal put it, it's a life game. Just people get caught up in these, in these, simulations or life games, and I don't know. I'm not. I guess it's the issue of how much of a malevolent, sinister nature do you give it. Or as opposed to, well, maybe it's just human, stupidity, ambition. In other words, what if it's just the, I don't want to say the evil, but just the sort of the darker side of each individual, of human wanting to control others. And yes, there are many groups that form, but is there any single group that stands out that has more power than the other? Or it seems like there's so many competing and jostling for position that they really don't have. There's not room for one to really take over, even though that's so. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what to think about all the vast conspiracies going on. Some are real and some are imagined. And
no, it's also interesting. It really is. It's I got into this to begin with because I have had some very interesting sightings, some pretty profound things have happened to me, and that sparked my interest, like a lot of people who are here and a lot of people who I'm noticing in chat who've had personal experiences, and that kind of led us here. And it's been really stunning to me to pull back the curtain and see some of the things that are going on in the quote unquote name of ufology, but it's just a big smoke screen over here and distract over there, and it's been a really wild learning experience for me.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
And I have to
ask,
what
are we learning?
I know. Sorry to cut you off. I apologize. I have a question from my friend in chat, Peter, and he wants to know, when you're looking at UFOs, what do you personally think they are, and why do you feel that way?
Oh, interesting. I really don't know what to make of it, because I say something's there, but whether it's interdimensional or demonic, or it could be all of the above. And I frankly, I just really have to say, I don't know. I really don't know. And to me, I do notice that, they have this deceptive aspect, which seems to be essential, and the irrational aspect, and that makes them totally elusive. But I'm not sure what to make of it. I just, something's there, but I don't know. I really don't. And maybe does that make me a true agnostic or something?
It makes you somebody who's grounded in their thought process. I like that. Have you had any personal experiences that you'd share?
Not with UFOs. When was it? The closest I came to it was what I think. This was like 3 or 4 years ago. I live in Van Nuys. I'm about 20 miles, west of Pasadena or JPL. And I remember floating in the pool one afternoon and looking up in the sky, and I saw this silver bright object that wasn't moving, and it was just hovering and bright, and I didn't know what it was, and I looked at sort of the because I'm on the same latitude as JPL, and I'm saying, hey, it looks like it's right over JPL, but that was it. I didn't know it. I've never had any experience. I mean, I've just been fascinated by the people and their stories about it, whether it's abduction or whatever. But I just don't have any UFO related experiences to report.
And so Michael in chat is wondering, he's just mentioning in Van Nuys, and he was wondering what year.
Oh, for this sighting?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was September of 2017. Okay. As far as I think, or was it? Yeah, maybe, or 16. Maybe I think it was September of September of 2017. I think so. 3 years ago.
Well, that's very, very interesting, and thank you for sharing that. And one of the other things that I know that you have, you've talked, and I know that you're just talking to your wife for a second, which is totally groovy. So I will just talk a little bit about this, but I want to go into the Mormon aspect of things. And as we know, as some of us know, it is very interesting because you've got Senator Harry Reid, who is LDS, and then you have the new owner of Skinwalker Ranch, who is LDS, and then you've got people like Joe Firmage, another person whose family is very prominent in the LDS community, and Firmage was involved in some very interesting goings-ons in UFO research. He was funding UFO research a few years back. He was a whiz kid who made a lot of money with back in, oh my gosh, this was 20 years ago, I believe, in inventing. Yeah. So, and you've got him coming into this and then working with, people at MUFON and, the same, again, cast of characters. And then you have a project that he worked on with Hal Puthoff and co, which is very interesting. So, yeah, if you can talk a little bit about that, I think these connections are interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you know that Joe Firmage's his religious conversion experience was reading the paper by Hal Puthoff and Bernhard Heisch, and who I met from the SSE on the 0-point energy of there was the physics paper that I think it was they were solving Einstein's E equals mc squared, and Joe Firmage read that paper in the mid-'90s, and that's what really launched him on his career. And then I don't know what happened. He kind of went, as these things do, they, like comets, they just streak across the sky, and then they seem to crash and burn. And then I think is it like 2010? He was at it again, trying to fund a anti-gravity machine that he developed. He said based on the ideas of Hal Puthoff, and that's where Brandon Fugel came in to finance that in 2010. Long before Brandon was involved with the Skinwalker Ranch, I think. So I was intrigued by that, and looking at the, that Joe Firmage is, he's a direct descendant of Brigham Young himself, which is an accomplishment when you consider that I think Brigham had 56 wives.
Must have been a busy guy.
Wow. A lot of grandchildren, including, great-grandchildren, including Joe Firmage, anyway. So the Mormon connection fascinates me because the Mormon religion is so simpatico with ufology. Just the way it was, the way Joseph Smith found the golden plates and meeting the angel Moroni, that seems to be so amenable to ufology today. I mean, I think the Mormon religion is more fitted to ufology than, to me, Catholic or Judaism or Islam or anything else. I mean, it's at least in the modern American you think of a modern American religion, which is Mormonism, and then finding out that Senator Harry Reid is a devout Mormon.
You mentioned the Mormon Mafia.
Yeah, right. And then I say, all right, let's if you want to read about this, the occult basis of the Mormons, then you pick up Peter Levenda's book from 2012, which he wrote more inspired by, I think, when Mitt Romney was running for president, but there it is again, Peter Levenda writing a really good book about the occult foundations of Mormonism, which I think should be required reading for everyone, with at Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah.
And that's the interesting, thing. There's so much that goes into all of this, and I find it fascinating how many roads are leading to Utah and Skinwalker Ranch, and when you peel away the facade that has been created around Skinwalker Ranch for entertainment purposes or for distraction or to hide what was really going on behind closed doors, behind the scenes, it is interesting to see how many people are involved and embedded in not only our politics here, but the religion it's absolutely, it's just mind-boggling to me the more I learn about all of this. But I want to go back to Firmage for a little bit, because he's been, he's a very controversial character, and he's has been accused of bilking people out of a substantial amounts of money for his projects and different things. And then you hear the other side of the story where he was actually taken advantage of because of his money and bilked out of his money. And so you hear both sides. But what is your take on that? And do you know? Can you tell us a little bit about the sighting that he had that really kind of opened his mind and really pushed him into researching quote unquote UFOs?
The sighting? No, I really don't know about his sighting, because it was only that he had read that paper by Hal Puthoff, the science paper, the physics paper, and that really launched him. And I don't know if I heard about his sighting, but that may have, I don't know if that happened before or after the paper. But I thought that his reading Hal's paper was what really triggered his conversion to ufology. And so I'd be interested to find out if his UFO experience happened after that.
Well, I'm not sure what the timeline is on that, but I mean, there is an interview, I believe it's on like Dateline or something from a few years back, where he's talking about this entity, from my recollection, bright ball of light coming into his room, and him having this epiphany and different things, and so it is interesting. And then I have to wonder, given some of the things that I have found out or have learned about some of the weapons testing capabilities that we have that can mimic some of these paranormal phenomena. You wonder if maybe he wasn't unfortunately exposed to some of that, or did he really truly have an experience, or was it this completely made up to get?
What about his, if I may use the phrase, latter day version of it, which is the same kind of experience by Deep Prasad, right? Last year, remember Deep Prasad, the quantum computing physicist or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Who wrote up who had his experience that he says was not sleep paralysis, where beings were talking to him, and right? Did you know about this?
You know what? I have not really followed him too much. I know he's, again, kind of another controversial figure, and people have done some looking into
lately
his
I've looked at the debunking, but he seems to be, like Joe Firmage, yet another one of those meteors, I guess, that streak across the sky, crash and burn, and that they're very, they get, very smart people, either smart in physics or smart in finance. They get caught up in and swept away by, I don't know if it's their ambition or their ego, or they get swept up by this and become, they get possessed by their own kind of story. And maybe that makes them susceptible to this mind control, if that's out there. Right? A certain level of absolute belief, in what you're doing is right. Right. So I'm saying, which, and to me, the antidote to that is, suppose, what if I'm wrong, but I don't know, that may be too much of a Catholic perspective. So,
I like it. Well, it is interesting to watch people in all of this, and to see what happens and how people can, this is a rough subject to get into, and I think a lot of people get into it with the best intentions, and it's along the way you can become easily corrupted, I think, by fame, or your ego, or you get manipulated and handled by certain people that don't have the best intentions, and so it makes it challenging. But unfortunately, now, because we've got social media and different things, you can watch people kind of self they
Yeah.
kind of
What is
implode.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can go back to that. When I talked about deception and irrationality,
Yeah.
and relating it to something like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, in the sense that you can know the position of an electron, but at the expense of its momentum, and vice versa. You know one, but then you lose the other. And to me, it seems that that if the UFO phenomena is both deceptive and irrational, so that if you try to look at the irrational part and be as rational as possible about it, try to make it as rational as possible, you open yourself up to the other side, which is deception. More, or you more blithely fall into the deception of the deceptive side of the UFO phenomena.
I really like that.
Precisely because you are so insistent on being rational, right? They're the ones who become the most deceived. And then on the other hand, those who, let's say, accept the deception, then I don't know how symmetrical it is, but because to me, like, think of the experiencers who fall hook, line, and sinker, or who have no scientific, and who just say, well, I had this experience and I believe in the Space Brothers, or I believe they're out to get us, that they accept in a way they accept the deception, but then they can't be rational about it. So it's a sort of like you get one at the expense of the other. Or maybe, but what if you were to sit back and say, well, it's both deceptive and irrational, and the way physicists, they got around the Heisenberg uncertainty principle by saying, well, we don't know the position and this, but we can sort of figure it to these boundaries, and so they made as my mother said, life hands you a lemon, make lemonade. So, quantum physics was able to make lemonade out of the uncertainty principle and turn it into something useful that they could use it. And I don't know, maybe, hopefully, if in ufology, if we can accept both the irrationality and the deception of it, and work with it, and not try to force our rationality and our demand for truth. I like to update the old motto of X-Files, the truth is out there. I say, yeah, the truth is out there, but it's a lie.
Right.
and which leads, I mean, even philosophically, you're stuck with the dilemma of the liar's paradox. The old the Cretans, the people from Crete. All Cretans are liars. I am a Cretan, so therefore, am I a liar or not? Well, you can't determine that. So, my scenario for an ET visit, I would have the ET come down and say, or I guess if I did a movie or something, I would have the ET say 2 sentences of 4 words. That's all it would take. So imagine there's like a conference, or of course this is all pre-COVID,
Yeah, well, yeah, it seems like forever ago, doesn't it?
Imagine, yeah, forever. But like a giant auditorium, and there's all this buzz because an ET is about to speak, and he's just going to make a statement, and so he comes up to the podium, and kind of looks human-like, can't really tell, but he says the first sentence is 4 words, is all ETs are liars, and pause, and the second sentence of 4 words is I am an ET. And then he leaves the podium. And so what he said, so immediately you have 2 warring factions, because if he's a liar, then he's not an ET, and that's what the skeptics would say. But if he's telling the truth, then he may be an ET, right? It's like it's an undecidable proposition. It goes round and round. But in going round and round, people will choose one side or the other, and instead of going around with it and realizing one leads into the other, they stake out their position. Well, the skeptics will say, he said in that first sentence, all ETs, he may be an ET, but he said all ETs are liars. So he's a liar, right? So he's not an ET. But then the true believers would say, but wait, he in the second sentence, he admitted it. I am an ET and I believe him, right? So you've immediately set two warring camps. I mean, so that's sort of my kind of, thought experiment about how, trying to get at the idea of deception, because you can't tell. You have to go at a higher level of reality to resolve the paradox. And actually it can't be resolved logically. But the point is, to me, it shows it's a way of describing how is it that we have the camp of true believers who fight tooth and nail against the debunkers, right? And are so adamant about it emotionally. Each side has an emotional investment in being right, and that the other guy I'm right because the other guy is wrong.
And it is really interesting to see. And I think sometimes, you look at the skeptics or the true believers. I mean, they are, everybody's so entrenched in in what they believe. And I mean, I have found myself, everybody I think falls into that trap at some point.
Yeah.
And you have to keep snapping out of it. And okay, wait a minute. And it's just a very interesting thing. And I know for myself, the more that I've learned, the more my thought process has changed and my feelings on the subject in general. But it's fascinating, all of it, just to watch human behavior, to see some of the games, to actually look at what they're studying and researching, which is, I always tell people to look over to Norway and look at good research projects like that when you're looking for the origins of the phenomenon. And it's just, I don't know. This is, like I said, it's been such a big learning process for me on multiple levels, and I've loved it, and I've cried myself to sleep because I've been so frustrated, and I've just wanted to throw my hands, up in the air and just say, forget it. I'm going to go back to music and and spend my time painting, because at the end of the day, what is this? What is it? What does it mean? But it is. I'm hooked. I'm fascinated by all of it.
Yeah. So am I. I'm hooked, even though I don't didn't have a UFO experience, or I don't I don't relate to the to it as a field or whatever. But I'm still hooked on it.
Yeah, it really is. It's something. And I have to ask, I've got a couple questions here from my people in the chat room. And one of the questions from Peter is do you, UFOs are deceptive? Yes, but what is irrational in your point of view?
Well, irrational is, I think, irrational in the sense of not submitting to our present paradigm of reality, and it's actually still a kind of the new. We have modern physics, but we still have an old Newtonian classical way of looking at it, of interpreting it. I think it's irrational only to the extent that we define rationality in such a limited way. The fact that it's hard to define, because it's defining. I'm defining it more like the absence of rationality. right?
Okay.
Whereas you look at the scientists who say, well, it has to submit to these laws of physics that we have today. Well, maybe it doesn't. I mean, the Fravor, the Tic Tac, I don't know if it's for real, and maybe it is. It's violating the known laws of physics, and so, but so that's irrational in the sense that if we usually we put all the science that we know is, well, that's the sum of our rational knowledge, let's say, and so this is playing around with that. So I don't know. It's not. Yeah, it's. Yeah, I don't really have anything specific about how to define it irrational other than that.
Okay. No, that's good. Thank you very much. And then another question is, what is the most intriguing question that you've ever been asked about the UFO or paranormal topic?
Oh,
that's deep. That's a good one.
Yeah, because that's intriguing, and I'd have to think about that a while, and there might be a lot of dead air. But the most intriguing question about the paranormal, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just does it really exist? Is there a thing of paranormal? Or is it just what we see with our senses? It may be not I can't think of one from a specific person, but I think maybe just sort of, maybe it's like what happens when we die. It's these questions that we really don't know.
Right.
So.
Well,
otherwise, I can't think of. I probably could come up with one, but it would take too long. I think.
Well, we'll get you back on it. You can think about it, and we'll have you back on the show. You can talk about that a little bit. And I want to ask you too, because we touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to get your thoughts on TTSA and the all of the goings ons with that. What do you make of that? Do you think it is a genuine attempt to solve this fascinating riddle, or do you think it is just another means to throw up a smokescreen, or perhaps is it another means for people to make money?
Oh, I mean, it might be all of that, but without any malicious intent. I mean, what's that law? Never attribute to malice what can be better explained by stupidity or ignorance. That's one aspect, or blind ambition and greed. That's possible. No, to me, I look at TTSA as to me, it comes out of Tom DeLonge, and I think he's, a classic, what we called in the 70s, Peter Pan complex. He's even got a song about it. The flying boy. This idea of escaping the bounds of Earth. To me, it's very psychological. I think it's, you look back into childhood traumas of one thing or another that we all have. And some of us, we kind of fixate on a certain age. And I don't know. I think, to me, Tom fixated during his teenage years, and it's like everything is so, fantastical. Like, to me, he's like a modern day Walt Disney, creating a fantasy land, a Tomorrowland. But I don't, and so I don't know what, because what is TTSA? But it's just these Tom DeLonge, it's Elizondo, and then you've got Puthoff, Semivan, you've got these. These old white guys. It's all white guys.
There's a shocker.
We can get it. That's a whole other issue. Where are the women, people of color? And anyway, but to me, it's a very it's very limited. I don't think it's as big as they make it out to be. I think it's kind of the same thing like going on at SRI, 50 years ago with Puthoff, and then then into the Army with the working group, the UFO group with Alexander, and then Bigelow comes along. It's all the same players, all the way back, and so I don't think it has that extensive a reach in the Pentagon or whatever. I think I think they that the way it's hyped, the way like the way Joe Merger hyped all the Wilson documents on Twitter. I mean,
well, that was a little unfortunate for him, but
yeah.
Can I have a few minutes with you sometime?
Yeah, and so but I don't know what to make of that. Of TTSA beyond the kind of Tom DeLonge's vanity project that I like that he's combined rock music or with this interest, but it feeds so much into the need for, I think, people of his generation to believe in something. There's such a strong religious aspect to it. And I'd say a Christian religious aspect to it, without without using Christ.
Right, and it's a great point. And I was just thinking about that because I think you do look at that connection, and then you look at political leanings, and I think it is very curious to look at Bigelow and crew and some of these people, and wonder what the true motivation is, and for some of these things. But with regard to, when you did bring up another great point about the white guys, and of course we know that the UFO field is predominantly older white guys, and all you got to do is go to a conference, and boy, that's a good time waiting to happen. But not to be naughty, because I'm just in a mood. But I mean, what do you make of that? And is there is there any? What do you make of racism in the field of ufology? Because I think that just given some of the things that have taken place with MUFON members, and some of the, you look back at history and you see some of the people that were, promoting the Space Brothers and having these experiences, but there were some real strange political and religious beliefs at play there.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, well, I think it's inherent in if you think of the whole white European male I was just thinking of it today. Is it not an extension of the same colonial imperialism that brought about white supremacy in the colonies? We're trying to colonize the planets and the universe now. That's the and that that might actually be an outgrowth of the white, the sort of the white supremacy of the last 400 years in colonizing. I mean, it's still, to me, it's still there, and it's easy to. They like to like when an obvious racial thing comes, like think of John Ventre and that whole issue. They're easy to scapegoat him and get him out of there, so we don't have to think about it. But yeah, I think there is this structural racism within ufology, talk about white privilege, and then if you bring it up, it's what's that book, White Fragility, right? Maybe I'm. Maybe I do have all this privilege over people of color and over women, which is, that's another whole other issue too. But yeah, I think it's. I just think it's inherent in ufology, but that's a reflection of the scientific worldview. I mean, you look back at what the genes that what is it known as? We have more Neanderthal genes or something. The people who settled in Europe, and it may actually be that white people. What is this? Is this imperialism in our genes? That they're maybe not the genetic differences that that we talk about in Victoria, like the Victorian era, which is obviously supremacy over the people of color, but the latest findings, I think, in genetics, behavioral genetics, evolutionary psychology, point to the idea that there's something there that's that in the old days we called race, but it's very difficult to point out because like you say, it's a minefield for everybody to walk through. You say one wrong thing and suddenly you're canceled.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's there, and it hasn't been addressed except by pushing it away. I mean, if you look at like for example, the channelings of the Nine by Phyllis Schlemmer at Eslen included definitely that all the white people were seeded by Tom and these creatures, but the black race was the race that was not seeded. They're more inherent to the earth, so they don't have the ambition to go beyond the earthly the way the white people do. So yeah, that's very that's considered that passage in the Phyllis Schlemmer channeling the Nine.
Wow, it sounds like Ramtha.
Oh yeah, okay. Ramtha, yeah. Only this was at Eslen.
Oh,
you mentioned Eslen.
Yes. Yes. And for people that don't know about Eslen Institute, this is really fascinating. Give us a little idea about that.
Oh, well, just, I don't know. I guess that would have to, I don't know much about it except that, who was the guy named Michael Murphy, who set that up. But it drew the intelligentsia of that time. I mean, Richard Feynman would be there, playing his bongos.
Oh boy.
Jack Fody would know. He would be the guy who knows all about. He was there during those sort of 70s, his formative years. But actually, I really don't know much about Esalen to talk much about it. But except when all these characters I happen to run into, that they talk about their Esalen experience. But yeah, it's definitely involved with it there, and just Google Esalen put the name of your favorite, ufologist you want to, like Jacques Vallée or somebody. Mm-hmm. Or, I don't think Hal Puthoff spent any time there, but yeah, you would. I know Jack Sarfati did a lot.
Well, and I mean, it is, and I would love to go there. It looks absolutely stunning. That's such a beautiful part of the country, Northern California, and I, they have a lot of, you look at the people that are speaking there at different events and things, and it's a very new age type of place, and it did appear to be kind of a bridge between the Americans and the Soviets, and there were, some definite interesting things going on there.
Yeah, that's right. The during the 70s, when Gorbachev and what was that? What's the term? Perestroika. Getting along with the and again, Jack Sarfati knows a lot about that. It was involved in the Gorbachev Foundation, and he's in San Francisco, and that's a whole other chapter, I think. But I don't know much about Eslen beyond those stuff I've overheard on.
Well, it's interesting. I've been looking into it, and it seems like a very fascinating place. It seems like a lot goes on there, a lot more than meditation and love and light. But it's just really I don't know.
They still have shops there, but it seems not like it was in the heydays of the 70s and 80s. I mean, so I'm not sure, and I haven't really followed it much.
Well, it's curious, and for some reason, and I don't know why, this just popped into my head, but Bohemian Grove just popped into my head too, because there's another place in California where the highest of the high, people in that are making decisions for all of us, and political figures and music icons and different people are go there. And what do you know about that, about Bohemian Grove?
Not much. I just you say that and suddenly I get a picture of Alex Jones, fulminating about it. But yeah,
I forgot that he snuck in there with his camera. Yeah, that was a good one. Oh dear.
Yeah. Is this because again, where the whole issue of attributing real malevolence when there just may be like like frat boy mentality, when it's just to get drunk and have a good time, So anyway, I don't know what to make of Bohemian Grove, and I haven't really I remember reading a lot about it, I think, in the early days of the internet, like in the late 90s. But again, I'm not up on that subject.
Well, if you hear anything, let me know, because I think it's just another fun avenue, to go, another rabbit hole to go down, and interesting things. And I want to, because we're getting ready to close the show, I want to just talk a little bit about, and I could hear your lovely partner in the background. And so tell us a little bit about your life at home and what's happening.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm here with my partner, Analea, and we've been together for 15 years, and she, last couple of years, she developed dementia from Alzheimer's, and now she's sort of in the mid stage. But would you like to say hello to Erica?
Hello.
Hi, Erica. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I could hear you talking, and I have to tell you, you've got such a beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's nice to hear.
Yes, you do.
We're enjoying our sunshine today while it lasts.
Oh, I bet it's beautiful. I know. I hear it's supposed to get really, really hot too. So it'll be fun for all of us. But I hope that you guys have a wonderful weekend. And I appreciate you letting me take 2 hours of time out of your Friday night. But this has just been such a fun interview.
Good. Oh, yeah. It was. I'm really happy. It was like a unexpected joy. I said, when you said, oh, well, all right, why not?
This is such a joy for me to talk to people and just have these discussions that unfold, and you learn things and you laugh and maybe get a little teary-eyed sometimes, but it's just doing this radio show and meeting different people. That's been a real blessing for me, in my life, because they're just they're like you. I mean, it's fun. They're amazing people out there, and sometimes when it gets, you get caught up in the negativity of life or ufology or whatever, I always I have to reflect on meeting people like you and having people like the people I have in my chat room or that listen to the show, who are just really good, kind people that are asking questions and deserve to find answers.
I mean, underneath it all, we're all fellow human beings, and sort of like, I think we're eventually everybody's getting, you know, we're being forced by circumstances to, you know, acknowledge that, you know, and some of us are, you know, more aware of than others, but, you know, that's the life we have. So.
Well, life is a trip, and I've never been more of a trip than right at the moment. I can tell you it's definitely the COVID thing has definitely forced a lot of people to make some pretty big changes in their life, kicking and screaming. It's been a really interesting time for everybody, but I hope you two are faring okay with all of that. Or how are you guys doing there with your restrictions? Are you guys still locked down?
Oh, we're fine. You know, between her dementia and my heart probably of AFib, like we were, and you know, I'm 72 and she's a bit older, and we were sort of locked down for 2 years in a way before this happened. So it was nothing new for us.
Well, that's good then. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, you can.
Yeah.
It's definitely been a switch for me. I know, and it's wow. It's interesting, but I want to just say I have to throw this in there. I try not to get too awfully political, but you know, I have to say when it comes to the COVID thing, I think that it's really important to wear a mask, and I think that anybody who believes that you shouldn't be wearing a mask needs to stay off of QAnon and maybe get a little reality check. Anyway, thank you for letting me vent.
Okay.
I try not to do that, but I just had to say that because, you know, I have people that I care about that are working on the COVID response on the front lines, and it's very real. And that's been one thing that's so frustrating to me, is to see that people are writing along these really dangerous conspiracy theories without any factual evidence. But that's just me. Thank you for letting me completely change subjects.
Okay. Yeah. You have a cat in the background there.
You know, that is baby Lewis, and every once in a while he makes a debut, and he's what, 15, 16 years old, and he's lost all of his eyesight. And so he's such a cute baby. He's been with me through a lot, and I've got I should write a little book.
Have 8 cats. We have 8 cats here, but they're they've been pretty quiet.
Wow, you 8 cats?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, how cool. You see, that would be my kind of place. I'm such a cat person.
Yeah. Yeah, we have indoor, outdoor. We have a nice backyard, and, you know, so where most of them are out, and they come in and out, so.
Oh, that's nice. Well,
yeah.
I love that. And they bring so much joy to our lives. And I just want to say, while I'm thinking about animals, Mario, I hope you get your new dog. I'm rooting for you. And I want to just thank you and your wife. Thank you both for being here and spending Friday evening with me. And I also want to just give a shout out to all of my friends who support the show. And Michael, thanks for posting that on your social media. I appreciate that. Scott Brown, who's going to be here next week, who does my beautiful graphic design. And then Mario, who is, like I always say, my right-hand man and just an incredible show supporter. And to all of you, you are the reason that I'm here every week. I love doing this, and I couldn't think of a better group of people to be talking in front of, and I hope we can all learn something. And I will be sharing some more Andruffle things as the weeks progress. I'm really excited about my new archive, and I want to just give a shout out to Alice Druffle, who was on my show a few weeks ago. You'll have to listen to that, and thank her for her love and support. And so, Tom, thank you very, very much. I hope that you two have a really nice, relaxing, wonderful, romantic weekend.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a really wonderful experience. I'm so glad you.
So it's nice to get to talk to you again.
Yes, it's nice to talk to you, and I'll give you guys a call this week, and we'll touch base.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Take care. Be safe.
All right. Bye.
Bye. And then thank you. And to all of my friends out there, thank you again. Please be safe. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. Stay out of trouble. You know that I will try to stay out of trouble, but it usually never clearly works for me. Whatever. I guess you just have to roll with it. Whatever you are, be a good one. So thanks for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll be here next Friday with Scott Brown from In the Field, and we will catch you then.